Okay, but one thing's for certain, and that's that no one has ever been harmed by a killer whale in the wild, while at places like SeaWorld, they are aggressive, raging maniacs. Now let's examine that. In the 1910s, a sled dog team were wave washed by a pod of whales in the same way they try to get seals off ice floes. The same happened 100 years later during the filming of Frozen Planet. In 1972, a surfer was bitten by a killer whale so badly that he required over 100 stitches. In 2005, a 12-year-old boy in Alaska was bumped in the shoulder by a killer whale. In 2014, a free diver was grabbed by a killer whale and pulled under for nearly a minute. Several of these are described as being a case of misidentification on the part of the whale, that the whales thought the humans were seals. But the same is true for great white shark attacks. They go primarily after surfers because they think we look like seals floating at the surface. The boy being bumped in the shoulder sounds so insignificant, and no one was even hurt, so why was that even mentioned? If you look up the individual cases of people being attacked by captive killer whales, the vast majority are just like this case in Alaska, being bumped by the rostrum, a whale opening its mouth or pushing a trainer. In the 50 years we have kept killer whales, with over 200 whales and millions of close interactions in the water, only very few have ever resulted in injury. The records are not clear, especially in the first decades, but there have been a total of 30 confirmed cases resulting in major or minor injury from 20 different whales, including the 3 trainer deaths. It seems the injuries were far more common in the old days of the 60s, 70s, and 80s. Not surprising at all if you look at how safety was handled in those days. Trainers frequently stuck their whole head into the whale's mouth as a stunt, sometimes resulting in bleeding wounds. And in one incident in 1971, a SeaWorld PR secretary rode around on Shamu wearing a bikini. And another time, a swimsuit model did the same. In later decades, it would be absolutely inconceivable to let anyone but a trainer with years of training and a strong relationship with that animal to ever be in the water with a whale. Also, more questionable training methods were used back in the early days, which could make the whales upset. And there really is no fair way to compare with the wild because humans rarely swim and interact closely with wild killer whales, unlike sharks, who often prefer the same beaches as us. If we had swam and interacted closely with wild killer whales millions of times over the past 50 years, who knows what the record would look like? Or take another animal as an example. Domestic dogs kill about 35 people a year in the United States, while only about 5 people have been killed by wild wolves in all of North America in the last 100 years. Could you from this say that domestic dogs are vicious killers, while wild wolves are nice and tame? Of course not. You cannot even compare the two figures. Or horses. Dozens of people are killed by horses every year in the United States alone, and countless more are injured. Sometimes the horse intentionally sets out to harm, but most of the time they are just large animals that are dangerous to be around because of their sheer size. Accidents happen. And then a horse is only around 8 times the size of a human. A killer whale is 50 to 100 times the size of an adult human. Also worth noting, as there is no record of anyone being killed by a wild horse. The common rebuttal to this is that horses and dogs are domesticated. If you are one to use this argument, look up further what domestication really means. In essence, it's to modify an organism through selective breeding to the point where it is genetically distinct from its wild ancestor. In animals, this often means making them calmer, more amenable to handling, less skittish and aggressive. It does not in any way diminish an animal's very deep, hardwired instincts to find food and water, be warm and comfortable, have freedom of movement, mate and breed, socialize and be happy, flee from fear, and attack if need be. Wild and domesticated animals are far more similar than we give them credit for. Or to be devil's advocate, if we could hypothetically domesticate whales in the span of a few generations, would that make all the criticisms of them being held in zoological facilities go away? Would they then never put teeth on a human again? No. Thus, but those animals are domesticated is not an argument. Now, most people watching this probably know 4 people have lost their lives to killer whales in human care. The first was Kelty Byrne, trainer at Sealand of the Pacific, who slipped and fell into a small sea pen where the 3 whales, Haida 2, Nootka 4, and Tilikum lived. The movie Blackfish tries to spin this as if Tilikum was the instigator and was absolutely being aggressive. But as even this film makes clear, females are dominant and Tilikum was bullied. There is no reasonable way they would have let him have a toy that entered their environment. The witnesses in the film commented on the floppy fin, but all 3 of the whales had collapsed dorsals at that time. They also said that the whales were used to having trainers in the water with them, but that is not true for Sealand, and it's what sets these whales, including Tilikum, apart. All other facilities regularly do in-water interactions called desensitization training done to get the whales used to having people in the water with them. It's still done at SeaWorld after the 2010 incident, in the medical pools, where the floor can be raised in case something happens. At Sealand, they could not do this because of their negative training methods. It would be too dangerous to get in the water with their whales. When Tilikum came to SeaWorld in 1992, he had already been involved in a fatal accident, and it was viewed as too dangerous to get in the water with him. So no one ever entered the water with Tilikum under any circumstances, and that's what makes him unique. Anyone who knew him would assert that he was a very sweet and mellow animal, but he was, unlike almost every other whale ever in human care, never trained for having humans in the water with him. We don't profess to know exactly what happened or what was going on in his head, unlike the people in Blackfish who will insist that they know his thoughts inside out and are 100% sure of what happened. But we can ponder at what is most likely. Tilikum was sweet with his trainers and low-ranking with other whales, but he was known to be very possessive with his toys, often refusing to give them up. It looked cute when he was tearing up a kelp bed and tossing it around, but imagine if he got a hold of a human and thought of him or her as a toy. And that's most likely what happened to Don Brancho and the park guest Daniel Dukes. SeaWorld trainer and Don's friend Jan Topoleski said after Don's death that she was down by the underwater viewing area when she saw Don's hair float into Tilikum's mouth. He grabbed it. Don tried to free herself, and Jan turned around to push the alarm button. When she turned back around, Don was gone. Imagine you have trained tigers or lions from outside a cage or on top of a platform, but never touched them in their entire lives. They have a good life, are well-adjusted animals and respond well to you, but one day you fall into the enclosure. What are they to make of this? Now you're no longer their caretaker and trainer. You're only an interesting object to them, and you'll likely end up dead. This is because they are predators and intelligent, inquisitive animals, not because they resent their captivity and finally have a chance to get their revenge. And while it sometimes makes headlines, no one bats an eyelash or start wondering at the whys and inserting their own ideas and agendas into the picture when a big cat, wolf, snake, crocodile, even a horse or dog kills a zookeeper or its owner. They are animals, accidents happen, and if they're top predators, it's just what they do. In essence, there is nothing different about the accidents and injuries sustained by killer whales from any other animals. On a few rare occasions they are being aggressive and have their reasons. They are, after all, animals with individual personalities, and everyone can have a bad day. And sometimes accidents happen simply because they are so huge. Safety protocols have been improved enormously over the years and continue to. So 3 of the deaths by killer whales can be said to definitely be because of lack of water desensitization training. There is one 4th fatal incident, and is the only one with a whale trained for water work. His name was Keiko, and he was born at SeaWorld Orlando in 1995. His mother was Kalina, one of the sweetest whales, who in her life of 25 years has never hurt a trainer, and he is in no way related to Tilikum. His full brother Keat is known to be a friendly and lazy whale, often the starter whale for new trainers at the park. But Keito was a special case from the beginning. Already, as a 3-year-old juvenile and still with his mother, he was known to push trainers around the pool with an open mouth or snapping his jaws at them. Waterworks should probably have ended with him long before a trainer lost his life, as it did with many other whales. What happened was that the whales were agitated, and Keito rammed into a trainer, Alexis Martinez, close to the pool wall, and Alexis's chest was crushed. It was an accident, devastating accident. Keiko, Tilikum's firstborn son, had only 2 minor incidents when he would refuse to let a trainer exit the pool, but did nothing to hurt the trainer. After this, however, waterwork interactions stopped with him to ensure maximum security for the trainers. Kasatka had several incidents, the most severe in late 2006, when she pulled a trainer underwater again and again for a total of 8 minutes. After this, waterwork was stopped with her. She is not an aggressive whale, however, and on her official profile it reads that her behavior in a show depends greatly on where her calf is, and at that time, her calf Kalia was in another pool vocalizing. Orchid has probably the longest aggressive history of all, including several incidents when she pulled a trainer under and one where she broke a trainer's arm, due to that trainer acting directly against SeaWorld's safety protocols. Waterworks was thus stopped with her. As you can see, the whales should be treated as individuals, not painted with one big brush because of what 1 or 2 whales did. And that's what they were up until the 2010 incident when Dawn was killed. After that, waterworks stopped with all whales, and several facilities across the world with no incidents on record stopped as well. After that, SeaWorld installed a false rising floor in the large back pool where Dawn was killed, something that previously only existed in medical pools. They introduced a new vest with air supply that the trainers could wear when interacting closely with the whales. Again, the producer of this film is only an amateur, albeit one who wants to know everything they possibly can about the subject. But we believe wholeheartedly from the available evidence that SeaWorld absolutely can make sure fatalities never happen again, while at the same time preserving in-water interactions with its whales. In fact, in a way, it is safer for the trainers to preserve waterwork, as the lack of waterwork is what produced Tilikum's case. The ex-trainer Mark Simmons, who appeared in Blackfish, incidentally the one with the most extensive experience in the film, and at the same time being pro-SeaWorld, said the following.
Can SeaWorld create an environment where it never happens again? Yes, I absolutely believe they can.
Looking at the overall picture and the life history and personality of individual whales and the evolution of safety measures through the years, we believe so too.